Well, hello everyone. I would like to officially welcome you to Stop Searching, Start Finding, Using Your Brain for File Management. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have a very informative session today, all different types of file types, bringing them into the brain, a lot of information, a lot of helpful information in getting you started with the brain. So thank you for joining us.
All right, great. But before we dive into the brain, I think it's only fair to give a nod to the past or talk about where we are today. And actually, in 1886, Henry Brown invented the filing cabinet. And that was a receptacle for storing paper. And then we had Siebel do the vertical storage. And of course, that file folder system, we still have these wonderful pieces of folders, and that's kind of what it was based on: organization based on separation. So if I have a document, whether it be a file or an actual piece of paper, I basically have to decide, do I want it in this folder or this folder? The problem is, what if it's relevant in about 5 different categories, as are some of our complex business processes or thoughts? It's very difficult to organize it. And have we changed this folder paradigm? Let's go ahead and see what's on my desktop here. And Matt, I just want to verify that you can see my screen.
I can, yes.
Okay, so here we have clients, and I can open up clients, but I have to decide if I want to put my clients in by industry, services, or VIP. I basically have to decide where to put these clients. So again, I'm looking at organize, and that's great if I really want to put things neatly in categories. But if my categories are a little bit more complex, or I'm trying to represent the way my brain works, I have much more connections in my head on a specific client than what my folder paradigm can show me. And it's very interesting, of course. It's 2018 and we have powerful clouding. We have mobile devices. So what have we done? We've replicated Henry Brown's filing cabinet on our clouds with Dropbox and Box.net and Google Drive. Love all these software programs, but we're still organizing by hierarchy. So I think what we're going to do is try and offer you something very complimentary, but something that's a little more evolutionary that will help you draw your own thinking out in terms of the organizational structure. And I know Matt is also very passionate about this subject. So I'm going to actually let Matt jump in here. And Matt, what are your views on where we are today with organizing information and so forth?
That's right. Well, first, let's go back to the filing cabinet, those relics that you can now find in antique stores and thrift shops. Still incredibly useful. I don't want to cast too much shade on filing cabinets because, in fact, I like to show this off from time to time. I keep my filing cabinet right here at arm's reach. I can always get to it. It's a very important part of my office. Why is that? Because it holds all of my cables. And I've got a collection here of all my iPhones, old iPhones. So I'll be going back and selling these on eBay one of these days once I think I can read. I can keep going and going here. This cabinet is, and actually there are the phones themselves, some of them falling apart, but I still keep them. It's my technology bin is really what it is. The one thing that you'll never find in my filing cabinet are files and folders. Of course, I too have gone through to the paperless office, and the absolute best way to do that, as I'm sure you'll see today, is by utilizing the brain. All my documents, all my important information, no longer in the filing cabinet. Why would I want to replicate that in a digital interface? I want something that represents the way I'm thinking about my documents and how I access my documents, and that is the brain. So, Shelley, I'll send it back to you to begin the demo.
All right, great. A little bit of nostalgia here, from Henry Brown to all of Matt's old iPhones. Wow. Okay, and with that in mind, what we're going to do is I'm going to close my folders. And sorry, I'm just clicking to get rid of some of my go-to screens. You can't see those. But so I want to do a direct comparison. So here we've got let's go back up to those services in the brain, client services. So you can kind of see how I'd navigate this in my folder structure with clients, industries, financial service, nonprofit, and here's what's going on in the brain. So for those of you that are new to the brain, welcome. And for those of you that have been using the brain for 2 decades, welcome as well. We're just going to level set by talking a little bit about the power of digital thoughts and then move into some very interesting file management tricks. So pieces of information in the brain, I'm just going to go to the top of my screen here, are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information, including your files. And that is where the power lies, because these thoughts can be connected to anything else. So what we're talking about is a many-to-many relationship map that you can create rather than simply a linear file folder, subfolder directory structure.
So pieces of information are thoughts, and thoughts can represent absolutely anything from notes to actual files and documents. And that's the focus of our call today. We're actually going to be bringing in all those different types of pieces of information, such as Word documents, spreadsheets, even links to web pages and online data and online content as well. And you'll notice the key difference behind the brain and all of the types of files and folders that you see is how information is connected rather than just a linear structure. You notice that when I click on a particular thought, it brings that thought into the center of the plex and displays all related information around it. So I'm not only seeing the subcategories for this thought, I'm seeing the category that we came from, that we were just on, related categories over on the right. These are called siblings, and they share one or more of the same parent thought. And down below, we have all of the child thoughts, all of their subcategories. And finally, to the left, we even have what we call a jump thought. And a jump thought is where we really break away from any type of hierarchical structure that you may be creating. So much unlike files and folders, this is related information. So something else that's close, another project or a person that's contributing towards that particular topic, whatever thought you may happen to be on. Something in a file and folder structure can absolutely not display or not portray. And if I go down a little bit further, I'm going to jump into clients by service level and jump into my gold service level clients. Remember earlier that Shelley was talking about, she's got a folder. She's got information in that folder pertaining to clients and all the documentations that are in that folder. But where does that folder go in a typical file and folder type of structure? Well, that folder, once you locate a place, if you're just using a typical file and folder structure, let me open that up on the side. So I'm just going to jump into my C drive and go right into this eSolutions, and we'll say clients. And if we decide clients by industry, communication clients, and I'm going to drop Netcom or Nexcom and Sprint in here. But what if Sprint is also a gold service level client? Or what if they are up for some type of renewal or fit into other categories? They're not only communications, they're now media and entertainment as well. So you might go to the wrong location in the future looking for that specific type of information or that customer or that folder. And if you don't find it, again, you're starting to do searches, you're clicking around through your information. The brain actually displays all those different relationships. I'm on my company name, my company thought for AlphaCore, and notice the parent thought up above, media and entertainment, communications, and gold service level client. I can see all the different categories that it falls into. I've got my subcategories down below. I've got related client, in this scenario, related clients. And finally, over on the left, the actual people that are working on this particular job or that are working with this particular client. And even more so than that, we'll be talking about this in greater detail today, we can actually see the relationship. We can visualize and explain why they're linked. Again, something a file and folder system simply can't do. Why is Fred connected to AlphaCore? Why is Joe Smith connected to AlphaCore? As you can see, Joe is an engineer. He's just advising on the work that we're doing for this client, whereas Fred Baxter, clearly, as you can see, is the account lead. And I can click on a link between two thoughts at any time to add notes to that link, so I can further define the relationship. Or if I end up double clicking, click on that link twice, I open up the thought properties. And here you can see I've assigned a link type, or I open up the link properties rather, and I can give this particular link some greater definition. Why are these two thoughts connected? Why are they related? And you can see that's really helping me down below as well. My current focus is this new media blitz that I'm working for the Alpha Corporation. So I'm actually defining the most active path or the most frequently used thought. I can bring attention to that information. Again, something a typical file and folder system cannot accomplish. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to jump into one of my thoughts. Now this, as you can see, is an active project for Alpha Corporation. And let's go ahead and get to the heart of today's discussion, bringing in some files and documents and categorizing them in the brain and sharing with you all the different features that you have for organizing all of your data, files, and information and finding it within the brain application. So I've got a sample directory open. I'll just jump back a few levels. And here I just have really a collage of different files that I'm storing, that I'm working on for my company, the eSolutions company. And I'm going to start bringing these into the brain. The first feature that I want to share with you is probably one that you will use most often especially when you're first starting out with the brain, and that's drag and drop. If you've just recently discovered the brain and started organizing your information within your digital brain, you probably have existing data, existing content that you want to bring into the brain. And the most commonly used feature is drag and drop of individual files. So I'm going to grab this website budget and simply drag and drop right into the brain. Now, as you can see, I dropped it down below the active thought. That created a new child thought. The child thought name is the actual name of the file, the name of the document itself. And I have a copy of that. In this case, it's an Excel spreadsheet. I have a copy of that file now internal in my brain. That's the default for dragging and dropping into the brain, is to create a copy of the original file. Now, you've got many options with the brain. Maybe copying files into the brain is not ideal for your scenario. You want to move files into the brain, or you want to link files into the brain in a shared environment. Let's say you've got access to a network drive where you have other colleagues that are editing, modifying documents and moving them internally into your brain, or just simply copying them. You won't get the latest update if someone else goes out to the X drive and makes a change. So a shortcut may work best. Maybe you do want to move files into the brain so you can travel with your brain and not be connected to potentially a network drive or something like that, and you need internal file attachments for all your thoughts within the brain. In that scenario, maybe moving the file in would work best. So therefore, within the brain, I'm going to click on Options and go into my Preferences. So Mac users, you'll click on the Brain and go into Preferences. And on the UI tab, this is a very, very important feature. And this is where you can determine how you want your digital brain to behave. When you drag and drop into the brain, do you want to copy files into the brain, link files into the brain, or move files into the brain? So that's your choice. I typically stay with the default settings of copying files into the brain. You can always go back and modify at any time. And you can even set up keyboard shortcuts, so you can override the default. So even though my default is to copy a file into the brain, on the keyboard tab, here we can look for attachments. If I just shorten this a bit, you can see I can search for all features of attachments. So copy into the brain or add an attachment or move file into the brain, move file in or out of the brain. I can set up keyboard shortcuts for that. So I've got a keyboard shortcut set up, and it's quite simply the Alt key. So when I drag and drop, but I'm pressing the Alt key, so I'm going to do that now for this corporate framework PDF. I click on Alt, I drag and drop into the brain, and it's very subtle, but if you look very closely, you'll see that little black arrow icon down there. I can also activate a thought at any time to see its properties or review information about where that file is actually stored, if it's a shortcut or an internal attachment. But for me, the shortcut, when I click and hold or press the Alt key, drag and drop, that actually brings in a shortcut to the brain rather than moving the file into the brain. So again, that's your choice. You can always go back and modify at a later date to change the behavior of the brain. I can also right-click on internal attachments and select to move those files in and out. I typically do that from the attachment tab over on the right. So I can right-click and I can select move file out of the brain or copy file out. And here on a shortcut, I can right-click and select to move file or copy file into the brain. So you can always go back and modify how file attachments have been attached to a thought within your brain. And let's take a bit of a closer look. Notice that my PDF file is actually previewing right here in the content window. PDF files, web pages, web-friendly content will always preview in the brain's built-in browser. And we'll get to web links here in just a moment. But also even Word documents, Excel spreadsheets. Now these may load up by default on a Mac. On a Windows machine, you'll have the preview button. So here you can see I've got a simple Excel spreadsheet, but if I click on preview, I can actually preview that document right there in the brain. So it loads up in the content window. I can't edit that document, but I can preview that document. And if I want to make further changes, I just click to launch, and sorry, it launched on my other monitor. It simply launched that file in its native application. So I quickly have access to this file to make other changes. Let's say I want to add another line or not say domain name. I just want to simply call this URL purchase. So I'll save that. Doesn't ask me where I want to save it to. That file is saved internally in the brain. And if I come back and preview, you can see now it says URL purchase. So I open that in its native application and make modifications from there. So those are some of the basic drag and drop features that you have within the brain. You also have the option of dragging and dropping URLs in as well. So I'm going to open up my web browser. And let's say I want to drag and drop. I'm even going to grab just the Brain website and drag and drop this right into my digital brain. So it doesn't matter what the URL is. What I'm really after is just simply visualizing the address bar. I got the address bar on the screen, and there's my brain. And you can do this from any browser. So whether you use Firefox or Safari or Chrome or IE, any of the big juggernauts of internet browsing, you simply grab the icon that appears next to the URL in the address bar and drag and drop that right into the brain. Now, it's telling me that the brain is always looking to see if I have a duplicate. I'm just going to add this as a new thought. So it grabs the actual thought name off of the tab up above. So this brain, the ultimate digital memory, and so that's what it actually named the thought that it created as well. And as you can see, I can continue on browsing through the website right here in the brain's built-in browser. So you can drag and drop very easily URLs into the brain. Now, also from time to time, in just a bit, I'm going to get to talking about some disparate information sources, online file sharing, emails, and things of that nature. But I want to share a few more examples of creating basic files, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and things of that nature in the brain. Not only can we drag and drop existing content into the brain to visualize it, we can also create those new documents from scratch. And I always like to let people know that that anytime they start creating their documents from scratch within the brain, I always use that as sort of a chart for you have now become a power user of the brain application. That is really the sign to me that a person has become a brain power user. Let's say I've got a new script for a presentation. We're adding a lot of data to this new active project for our client. And the next step is to create my presentation script. So I'm going to create a new thought. So there's my presentation script thought that I've now created. Now, there's nothing to drag and drop into the brain. This file doesn't exist yet. So I've got many different options. The first of which that I'll share with you are the brain notes. In addition to bringing existing data into the brain, we can create new data, new content, new information from scratch. And the brain notes, as you saw me clicking through this particular brain earlier, from time to time, I'll come to a thought that just has some different notes about a meeting, about a client, maybe it's a contact number for a person. Each individual thought in your brain has its own notes tab. And it really, for me, becomes like an ongoing journal for that particular topic. With the notes in the brain, I can simply, here are my rough ideas. Maybe I want to create just my rough outline. The document itself will be a Word document, but here's my first thoughts on my script. I have some different formatting options. As you can see up above, I want to include a company background. I want to then go through introductions, talk about our vision, etc. So a lot of information about just sort of the basics behind this document. I'll go in and add this here from time to time. Maybe I give my presentation to a couple of peers or colleagues and I want to get their feedback. They thought it was too long or too short or needs more final numbers on 2017 sales. Whatever the case may be, I can add that information there into the notes and refer back to that at any time. The great thing about the notes, again, individual notes for every thought. I can also add check boxes. So my notes now become a checklist, a project checklist. Have I accomplished everything that I needed to in the brain? So step one, I'll just make these really quickly. Step two and step three, etc., and simply check those off the list. So some really, really great features there in the notes to help you preserve information. And I'm going to be coming back to notes to talk about bringing content from files and documents into the notes as well. Sometimes you don't need the entire document. You just need a paragraph or you just need a graphic, and you can easily cut and paste into the notes as well. But for now, I'm going to start creating my new script. So I simply click on the plus tab to add a new attachment from one of my templates. Now, this is my template list. This is actually the default template list, or the template list that appeared when I installed TheBrain. I can customize, and you can customize your template list. If you don't see the file type that you're looking for, or let's say you actually have, you're giving presentations to all your different clients, and you've got basically a rough outline that you start with, but then you just fill in the blanks with client names and the appropriate sales figures, etc. You can actually add and create your own templates. Just click on the templates button in the Add Attachment tab, and I'll click on Yes. Just follow these on-screen instructions. It's going to open a directory, and anything that you drop into this directory, let's go ahead and drop one of my sample documents. So let's say I have a sales cover or a sales report that I want to use as sort of the starting, the basis for a document. And I'm using it quite often within the brain on many different thoughts. That's a great example of when to create a template. So I just drag and drop sales report. I could copy and paste it in. Now I've got it there in my template list for the brain. So when I return to the brain, and I'll just refresh and click on templates again, there you can see is my sales report Excel spreadsheet. So I can create my own templates, custom letterheads, or just documents that I'm using most often right there within the brain. Now for this example, I just need a blank Word document. So I'm going to select Microsoft Word. And sorry about that. It actually opened up on another monitor. Let me see if I can bring that over.
And while you're bringing it back, Matt,
Hey,
I just wanted to let you know, hey, I am back on, and I'm on Q&A, and Morecom was actually asking about creating templates for documents. So you just covered one of our questions in the Q&A, so that's fabulous. A lot of questions on templates and creating information from scratch. So I wasn't sure if you were reading the Q&A or that was just part of your MO, but that was one of our questions.
got lucky with that one. Great.
Okay, great. And then just a follow-up to that question, he's wondering if the template can be used for any number of thoughts in different parts. Like once you put that template in, is it available throughout that brain? So, and I'll let you get back to
That's an excellent question.
Your demo.
It's available throughout this brain and available in other brains that I create as well. That's sort of getting a little bit off topic. You know, you can create one brain for everything and have your business information, personal information, have it all in that one brain, or you can create smaller topic specific brains. So let's say I create a different brain for every customer that I'm working with in case I ever want to zip it up and send them a copy or share it with another colleague that's working on that account. You can create smaller topic specific brains, but these templates will be utilized in any brain that you create. So you can have very unique naming conventions. I've seen people with long list of file templates to choose from, and they've got sales templates, they've got research templates, they've got QA, quality assurance templates, etc. So you can create as many different templates as you want, and they're universal across every brain. They can be accessed and utilized. So here I just selected the Word document as my new file for this thought, and notice that the file name is presentation script. That was the name of the actual thought. So therefore it's the name of the file I've created. And here is my presentation. So I get started, I add some content. Once again, I save it. It's not asking me where I want to save this document to. This document is saved internally inside my brain. So there's my attachment, my Word document. I can preview, and it's saying here's my presentation. That's all I've added so far, but I can, again, come back to this at any time, launch this attachment, and continue on making further edits and modifications. So let's come back to the brain. We've created new documents from scratch within the brain. We've dragged and dropped from the web. We've done drag and drop of different file types, whether it's shortcuts or internal attachments, different file types. Now I'm going to go a little bit further and talk about some other ways that you can populate a brain. And the first option, or the first topic I want to discuss, is importing. Many times you have the existing data that you need, but it's in not just in a series of other documents, it's an outline in an Excel spreadsheet, or it's the outline of a book in a Word document, or it's in some type of database that you want to import into your brain. There are many different import options, and we won't have time to cover them all today, but notice if I click on File and select Import, this is a list of many of the different import types that we have. So we can import an older version 8 brain into 9, very commonly used feature right now as people migrate their data from 8 into the new brain 9. And we can also bring in text outlines, even Mind Manager and Free Mind maps. Existing mind maps can actually be imported into the brain. Many other mind maps, you know, there's features about them that either limit people's access or that people don't like about other applications, whatever the case may be. Let's say use Mind Manager, for example. There's just a finite number of actual, I think they call them nodes, that you can create in a mind map. And typically they're visible on the entire screen at one time, and you're just sort of zooming in and out of, I think it's called a hyperbolic tree. Whereas with the brain, once you reach those limits, you can import that map into the brain and have an unlimited number of connections or thoughts that you create. So I'm going to actually, and if somebody wants to see a particular type of import, let me know. But a very common import that we hear about are Excel spreadsheets. So So I'm going to jump over into, and these are some of the different map samples that I have. I believe.
And Matt, while you're looking through your samples, and if you don't have this, I can take the ball. A lot of people have been asking about folder connections and importing folders or linking to folders. So if you have a folder import, you can do. If not, I can cover that in the Q&A.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Well, I just opened up an Excel spreadsheet. So we'll do this one first, and then we'll bring in a folder as well. So you can import a lot of different data sources even into the same brain, which is what we'll see. So this is the outline for maybe a presentation on green people and people's who are creating positive effects on the environment, what have you. In this case, notice the formatting. Every time it slides down and over one level, that's actually going to create a new thought. So under green people, we're going to have 2 thoughts, alive and deceased. Under deceased, we'll have 3 people, John Audubon, James Muir, and William Morris. And a couple of symbols that I really want to bring to your attention. The pipe symbol that says William Morris, favorite. He's actually one of my favorite historians, furniture maker, just very, very interesting guy. I've got a little plus tab that's giving me a hyperlink, and a dash, which is giving me a note. So I'm going to select some of this content. I'll just copy that onto my clipboard. So I did a Control-C here. And in the brain, jump back to the brain, this type of import comes in a little bit differently. Rather than selecting the file from import, I copy the information onto my clipboard. The brain now notices that I have outline content on my clipboard. So when I right click in the background, I have this option of, now I can paste all that information as a wallpaper, which is kind of interesting in some scenarios. In this case, I want to paste the text outline as thoughts. So I'm going to click, and you notice it created one thought underneath see the world, and that's the very top entry or top cell in my document, green people. Under that, we have 2 thoughts, alive and deceased, and we go down all the way down to William Morris. Notice it attached the web content, it attached the note, and when I mouse over, it tells me that's one of my favorite historians. So a couple of key features built within a properly formatted Excel spreadsheet, and you can really populate a brain very, very quickly. So let's go back now, and let's also import a folder, as Shelley mentioned. So maybe you already have all your documentation for a project. You've been using file and folders. You've discovered the brain. It's time to get that information in. Rather than building it thought by thought, and I'll just create a new child thought underneath see the world, and I'll say previous data. So I create my new thought, and underneath this, I'm going to import my old marketing information about this project. So I simply click on File, Import. And as you can see, there's an option to import an existing folder. And it gives you some information. Each folder becomes a thought, and then the files in those folders are going to be attachments to the individual thoughts. So
and Matt, real quick before you select the folder,
sure.
One thing that's really cool in this interface, go ahead and select your folder, is you can make it a new brain or add to eSolutions. So you've got those 2 radial buttons. So if you want to make a new brain off your folder, or in this case, you're importing, so you'll change the radial there. That'll be great to show.
And so I'm going to select in my eSolutions. I believe I have, there's my marketing. And I've got a lot of information there in marketing. So that's what I'll select. But notice in the background, Shelley's referring to, do you want to create this as a new brain or add to eSolutions? I haven't changed that yet. So first I select my folder and say, okay, it gets the import ready to go, but I'm not going to click on import yet because I'm actually going to add this to my existing brain. So 2 very, very important radio buttons right there at the very top. Do you want to import that data into the currently open brain or as a new standalone brain all by itself? So very, very quickly, you can take an existing folder that you have for your company, for your client, or for your research, and just create that information in a brain to get you started. So I'll go ahead and import this into my existing. Click on import and verify. Yes, I do want to import. It actually can be undone. The message is a little bit deceiving because the wonderful thing about the brain is we've got a great undo feature. If for some reason I put this in the wrong brain or the wrong area, I can always go up to edit, and notice I can just really quickly undo, create those thoughts. And so all those thoughts I just created would be removed once again. But there you can see is my marketing folder. All the subfolders that were in that directory, Ad 21, corporate files, graphics, etc., are all now thoughts down below. And file attachments, you can see many of these have file attachments, and I'm actually previewing the graphics themselves just by click, and I can preview all the different graphics that I have actually associated with that folder, that were inside that folder. And all this information is actually automatically being indexed by your operating system. So the Brain 9 utilizes on Windows machine, it's going to utilize your Windows desktop search. On a Mac, it's going to utilize Spotlight. So if I want to very quickly find those that seeds graphic, I'll just type in seeds or seed, and there you can see it finds seeds JPEG on the graphics thought, and I can go directly to that thought that had an attachment called seeds. So as soon as that information is imported into the Brain, it automatically becomes accessible by navigating or by doing a quick search to find that information. So we've brought a lot of data into this Brain very, very quickly. Here I just started working on this thought moments ago, and underneath this thought I probably have anywhere from 30 to 50 to 100 thoughts that I can actually start connecting to other pieces of information, navigating, utilizing my search, adding notes, and continuing on with this project. But I've got a few different data types that I want to share with you. These are very common questions that we get at the Brain, is how to incorporate not just files and folders, but files that are stored online. There are many, obviously, very popular online storage. I always refer to them as online storage. And of course, I'm talking about Dropbox or Google Drive. Some people see this as collaboration because they can share a link with a friend or send a link to a friend for a very large file without actually having to send it through email. And of course, all of that data, all of that information can easily be brought into your Brain as well. And the important thing about that data to point out is that almost everything has a URL. So let's just start out, since I mentioned Dropbox first, let's just start off with Dropbox. Now, if I open up my C drive, and I go.
And Matt, I'm glad you're just to interject. I'm glad you're getting into linking to different folders, because a lot of people are asking, how do I link to a folder on the web, and also just how do I link to a folder on the desktop without importing it? So covering all the linkages from folder to web will be great.
Okay, great. And I don't utilize Dropbox too often, so I actually have to do a little bit of searching around here on my machine. Here, we'll go this way and find Dropbox. There it is. Great. So here is my Dropbox directory. So the way Dropbox works is everything that goes into my Dropbox. So here's where Dropbox folder is on my C drive in users, Matt Caton, Dropbox. Anything that I put in here is going to be synced and appear online in my Dropbox account. And from there, I can grab shareable URLs to share with friends, etc. So the files that are here locally work the same way as what we reviewed earlier. If you just want to link to a file, since Shelley mentioned just reviewing this process, you may remember earlier that I did a drag and drop into the Brain of an individual file, and that actually creates, for me, because my default is to copy, that copies that pricing chart in. If I want to override the default setting, I can hold down the Alt key. So I click on Alt and grab this project plan and drag and drop. I haven't moved where that actual file resides. Project plan is still in my local Dropbox folder, and there's my shortcut to the project plan that I can preview in the content window or click to launch, and that's going to launch that project plan. I'll just go ahead and launch that in its native application, which is Word. So there's my project plan document opening up. So The local files for Dropbox behave the same as other internal local files, and we can still manipulate them in the same ways here in the brain. But the online version of Dropbox can be accessed from your brain as well. So let me open up my browser, and you can see I've got a lot of different samples to share with you today. Dropbox, Google Drive, even Evernote. And the key thing to point out, rather than going through and taking a file one by one in every application, I'll go through this quickly. Let's say I've got my online resources. And I want to link to a few of these that I'm doing research for my ad campaign for my company. Every individual item on Dropbox, in Google Drive, they all have URLs. So if I hover over a thought, here's my materials research, I'll click on, in this case, Dropbox, I click on share, and I select copy link. And that copies this URL for this particular file onto my clipboard, and back in the brain, I right click and paste web link. And notice that it names the thought itself as Dropbox, but when I hover over, it tells me the file name. That's my materials research. So I can click and actually launch that over here in my content window. Now I'm already logged into Dropbox, so therefore it actually launches. I don't need those comments. It actually previews for me in the content window. If from within the brain, I was not logged in yet, I would be seeing the login screen right now. Or no, in this case, actually, I'm not logged in, but I've made this document public. And it's important to point that out because a lot of the documents that you have in Dropbox or Google Drive, what have you, sometimes you share them publicly, sometimes you keep them private. If you link to them in the brain, you'll need to log in from the brain. Now, I know I'm not logged into Google Drive, so I'm going to do the same thing now from Google Drive. If you're a Google Drive user, the formatting is a little different. You get a nice little preview in Google Drive of all the different files. Here's my contract. I'm going to right click and I go right to get the shareable link. I click. I actually don't need to do anything with that window. When you click that get shareable link, the link is copied onto your clipboard. So in the brain, now that I know that's on my clipboard, go back to online resources, right click in the background and select to paste. Now notice that it actually renamed the thought for Google Drive. Every web page behaves a little bit differently. The brain is actually able to name the document name, the thought name, and there I've clicked and actually I am logged in right now. So let me go ahead and log out. So you can see when I navigate to this thought, it asks me who I want to log in as. So the reason why I want to point this out is because if you actually share your brain with another user, does that mean they've got access to your Google Drive and to your Dropbox? No, they certainly don't. When they launch the brain on their desktop and they come to a file or a thought rather, that is linked to a file that's in your Dropbox or in Google Drive, if it's not publicly accessible and they haven't logged in as you, they're going to see this. Who do you want to log in as? And they can't access this information. So you need to share that information from Google Drive or from Dropbox before they can actually access that particular document. Now, here's a really specialty item that I want to share with you. Evernote, the links that you get, the shareable links that you get are formatted much differently than those of Google Drive and Dropbox. And we hear about this a lot. It's something that's not beyond our control. It's something that Evernote decided to do with their links. If you're an Evernote user, I'm sure you're already aware of what I'm going to be telling you, is that they've done away with their classic links. I think they called it the classic Evernote link, where it linked back to the local application. Now, I've got Evernote open, but what we're able to do with Evernote is capture both the classic link and the online URL, and you've got an option of which you want to go to. But all you need to do is paste the link into your notes. So here we are in Evernote. If you're an Evernote user, this will look very familiar to you, and we can copy here from the desktop application. I'm going to right click and copy the internal link. And rather than pasting that into the brain, a thought for the brain, here's my upcoming travel thought. I think I clicked on a travel note there in Evernote. I'm going to right click in the notes of the brain and select to paste. And notice it gives me this little welcome back, but from there I can click, and that's going to take me right to that content. So you can still get to the content. Now I thought, let me go back to Evernote one more time. Oh no, that was for OneNote. Sorry, Evernote is going to take you to the online version of that content. So we're not able to get into the local desktop version of Evernote, but you can access the online version of that content from the desktop. It's OneNote, and this will be, I think, the final component that I'll share with you. OneNote, following suit, also took away those classic links back to the local version on their desktop. This is the one where if we paste into the notes, we'll actually have two different options. So with OneNote, I can right-click on an actual paragraph. I can right-click on a note or on a tab. There's every little aspect that you add into OneNote. Everything has its own unique URL. So let's say I want to link to my entire to-do list. I right-click and I select Copy Link to Selection. And for OneNote, if I go back into the brain, let's say I create a thought for my OneNote information. And I right-click in the notes and paste. Notice I've got two links. So the first link links me back to the desktop application, and the second link will actually take me online. So it's my choice. Do I want to open up my note in the desktop application? I click. There I am in the desktop application on the Maps to-do list area. Or if I click the next link in the note, notice I'm going online. I'm already logged in, so it takes me directly to this particular note in OneNote. So that's a really, really sort of unique way of adding information, but the links do still work with OneNote. It's just a matter of once you have that copied to your clipboard, paste those into the note in the brain for easy access to that information, either on the desktop or on the online version. And I think, Shelley, with that, we're coming right up on the hour. I wanted to talk a little bit about Outlook if we have time as well, but if there are other more pressing questions, happy to address those.
Well, you know what? There was a question on Outlook, so we do have questions, but go ahead and go into Outlook, and then we'll get into some other questions. That's great.
Great. So here I am in Outlook.
And webmail. There were a couple questions about how I integrate email, so Outlook as well as Gmail if possible.
Okay, great. I certainly can. And they're both unique or sort of different in the process of how we link to that data. With Outlook, the first thing that I want to stress with Outlook is we're not done yet with Outlook integration. Further Outlook integration is on the roadmap, and we do intend on bringing in further capabilities for Outlook in the Brain 9 in the future. But for the time being, let's say I want to archive some of my emails that I receive in Outlook. And here I just open up my Outlook, and it's a link to sort of a newsletter from PBS TV show, This Old House. But I like the formatting. Maybe I want to share this with my client, see if they like how all the graphics load up and the simplicity of navigating through this type of message. So I'm simply going to drag and drop this Outlook message from Outlook onto my desktop. So I bring it onto the desktop, and that basically saves this Outlook message. Let me bring my brain back as well, as an MSG file. Now that I have that MSG file, I can drag and drop right into the brain. So I click, and there is my Outlook message. And once again, I click to launch that, and it's going to, sorry, it brought me over on the other monitor, but there's that, that message loading up in Outlook. So a two-step process, drag it over onto the desktop. The other option is to actually open the containing folder. Every thought that you create within your brain has a containing folder where all the internal attachments reside. And they're not zipped up, they're not compressed or renamed in any way, but you can click on the plus tab not only to add attachments, but to open the specific containing folder for that thought. And then with this folder actually open, you can drag and drop from Outlook. Let me grab another message. Let's say I want to grab this Dropbox message, and I'll drag and drop that right there into the containing folder. So I launched the containing folder, drag and drop, and you can see I've got 2 Outlook messages actually now associated with this thought. So those are MSG files, and they are saved internally in your brain. You can actually go back to Outlook and delete that message and still launch it because you've saved an archived copy of that email here in the brain. Now, Gmail works a little bit differently, but the key thing to remember about Gmail is everything has a unique URL. And so I'm going to launch my Gmail account really quickly. And here in Gmail, you can see I'll go ahead and launch. And there's the same message in Gmail. And I can drag and drop just as you saw me doing drag and drop from web pages earlier. So I grab the URL. Every Gmail has a unique URL. I drag and drop right into the brain. And it names that thought Gmail. You may have noticed, like, if you remember my some other applications, Dropbox just names the thought Dropbox. So I can go in and rename that to this old house mass email format. So whatever is going to help me with why I've saved or archived that message. And here's the great example. Once again, I'm not logged in, so the preview in the brain doesn't show that message because I'm not logged in the brain's built-in browser to this account. So I can minimize, go full screen, and I can log in with this account. Use another account. See if I remember my hey, first try. So there, I'm logged in, and I'm still in the brain right now. It looks like I'm just in a web browser, but I'm actually in the brain, logging in to my email. And once again, if I click, now that I've logged in, I click that attachment, it's going to take me right to that attachment. Or if I click away and come back, it's going to load up that attachment. Now that I'm logged in the brain, right there in my content window. So 2 different email applications, 2 different ways to save that data inside your brain.
All right, great. Well, we do have a number of questions, and for those of you that do have to leave in a couple minutes on the hour, this will be recorded. I do want to go back, and I apologize. I had a internet outage in my office here, so there are a few basic stuff too that I said questions on that we'll kind of go back, and also if you did cover them when I cover these questions when I was off, I apologize, but let's go ahead and go through those, and we'll stay on the line for another 5-10 minutes just to get to all your questions. But back to William's question, linking to folders. Still didn't show that, so we showed all the complex information of Drop, but just your own folders. Yeah, we did the import. So if we could cover that, that will be great. And that's something I usually show in my demo too. So that's where we're a little bit topsy-turvy here today. So we'll go back and show a few things, a few more basic things like that, you know, while we still have a couple minutes.
Well, the folders will behave in much the same way as your default settings for drag and drop. So an easy way to link to a folder is, again, just using drag and drop. If you have set up your preferences to, and I'm going to go back to UI, and instead of copying drop files, I'm going to link to drop files. So if linking to an existing folder, maybe you've got a huge folder network, you just want a different way of accessing or visualizing that information. So you want to link those folders into the brain rather than import them in and copy in and bring in all the content. I've changed my default setting in the brain to link. I could have also used the keystroke, but I wanted you to see that really quickly I can change the default setting. And now when I am in the brain and I drag and drop into the brain, by default, I am creating links, and that affects anything that I'm dragging and dropping into the brain. So whether it's a file, a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, or a folder. So this is the link to folder. And I'm sorry if I missed that earlier. I thought we were referring to importing that data into the brain. Here
there was a question on that too, so it's all of the above. So it was just like everything.
And that's why the brain,
like I said, I usually cover that in my session. So.
And that's why we have these different options in the brain, is because no two brains think alike. No two business processes are ever alike. Whereas, person A needs to bring all their data into the brain, they need import capabilities, whereas another person might just simply want linking, so they have used the brain as a way of accessing these other information sources without actually moving where it currently exists. And here, of course, is a link to clients. So I'm going to close this directory, and when I launch the attachment for this thought, it is a link directly to my clients folder that's there was in that Dropbox directory.
And actually, the funny thing about this feature is it's for a lot of business users are dealing with these, as I mentioned earlier, gargantuan file drives. So in this case, obviously there's a lot of stuff you will want to import from your own desktop and store internally, which is especially important for sync, which we'll get to that. But if you're if you have Microsoft SharePoint or just shared network drives, and you're constantly drilling down to get to that marketing folder, the clients folder that's buried like literally 10 levels down, and I've seen this on site at clients, go ahead and create that shortcut in the brain, and then your brain really serves as this remote control for all the information. And then getting back to the power of these links and connections and why we're beyond the folder. Now Matt can take that client's folder and link that to a service, link that to a person, link that. So this is where it in addition to kind of we're showing you how to move beyond, just getting back to the power of how to link things when it's there. We'll cover that as well.
And here you can see I'm just really quickly making a note that Bill Abbott is going to be reviewing our clients directory. So maybe that came up at a recent meeting. I simply drop a little note in there, and anytime I'm reviewing my online resources for this project, I want to see how things are going with the clients, Bill Abbott is the person I need to speak with. So again, something you can't do with a typical file and folder structure. I would never know Bill Abbott is reviewing this data unless it was written down in a document within the folder that I happen to open. But the brain can actually provide you that extra context of the file information.
And you can have multiple parents for any thoughts. So clients is under online resources. He can link that up to eSolutions Consulting to be at the top of his hierarchy or under his Media Blitz campaign, any of that. And now this particular folder is basically living virtually in multiple categories without the duplication. On a standard folder system, the only way you can do that is to shortcut in the folder from one to another, but you still can't see the connection, so it's not that helpful. So for those of you dealing with these more complex business processes and categorization systems, just a friendly neighborhood reminder on the power of linking from the brain. So once you get that data, and don't forget, it doesn't have to stay in your standard category. You can go ahead and weave away a view that is just not possible in that from your source directory that you imported it or linked it from. All right, great. And then I guess we have a few more questions that we're going to get into. Is there anything else, though, Matt, you wanted to cover in your demo before we jump into more of the Q&A?
You know, I think that's everything that I wanted to share. I did not get a chance to import all the different data types. So if you do have something specific, or if you even want a sample import file, just so you can see, gosh, you know, Matt had all these different special characters in his Excel spreadsheet that had different actions once that file was imported. I'm happy to actually send you that file. Just send a note into support@thebrain.com, and any of the sample imports that we've done today, or if you'd like further information about linking to different data types, we'll be able to answer your questions from there.
Well, there was actually at the beginning of the webinar a couple questions on, first of all, a lot of people coming from version 8 to version 9, how to import a Brain 8 into a Brain 9, and then unfortunately one of our users has had a laptop failure and is looking to import stuff into his newer machine. Now, my first question to him was, did you sync to the cloud? So we should cover cloud services, because if it happens, you know, you spill water, hardware does break. So we'll talk a little bit about syncing files, and the only caveat with sync when you are linking to all these sources, if you're just putting things in as shortcuts on your desktop, keep in mind that that data will not be available on the cloud. So what I do recommend all the time to users when we're talking about file management is to store, and I think Matt talked about that a little bit earlier in his presentation, to store that information locally in the brain and then sync to the cloud. So we can cover that, as well as maybe an importing of a brain 9. And then Markham's asking, can I merge data from that brain that was on? So he also just wants to copy thoughts from one brain to another, or create the master brain by merging different brains.
Great. So everything that I've done today is local on this local machine. I've just been working on the local desktop brain. The reason why I don't use the accounts that I opened up for OneDrive and Google Drive and Dropbox, etc., those are all sample accounts, because if I ever have a file that I need to share or access from the web, I sync my brain to the web. And there's many benefits to doing that, so I'll share a few of those with you. Here I've done everything local today, but I'm just going to click on the cloud icon there on the brain's toolbar, and it's going to sync all the changes that I made. This brain has already been synced in the past. Now it's syncing any updates it hasn't received or hasn't synced since its last sync, and it's syncing all of those to the cloud. So let's go ahead and log in. If I go to TheBrain.com, here I am at www.thebrain.com, and at the top of the page, there's an option to log in. So I'm going to click on log in and log into the Brain Cloud, and I'll be able to access any brain that I've synced, and you'll see I actually have many different sample brains, different topics. There's my information. I'm logging into the cloud. Now I've got access to this brain. All the internal attachments are syncing along with the brain, all of the graphics, all of the notes, etc. And actually, there's my eSolutions Consulting brain. You can see I've got quite a few different brains that are loading up for me, but I'll load up my eSolutions brain. And not only will I have access from the web interface, but I can also log in from my phone as well. Where's my camera? Down there. So I'm going to now open my brain application and actually access. And there you can see I launched, this is my personal brain. I'm in the fitness area, but I'll go to my brain list. There are buttons down below for me to add notes, thoughts, to sync. And here's my full brain list. And if I scroll through, I'll find my eSolutions Consulting brain. You can see I've got quite a few different brains, but I've got access to them right here from my iPhone as well as from the web. So rather than showing that tiny little iPhone, here I am now in my web browser. Everything that I've done today is accessible from the cloud. I can add new thoughts and right into the web interface. So they've created a thought called new data. From here, I can add new notes. I can add file attachments and web links. I can actually do pretty much everything that I can do on the desktop right here from the web interface. So I mentioned many different benefits. Yes, online access is fantastic. I can share this brain with other brain users so they can access my data as well. Depending on, you can even upgrade your account to Team Brain services. So I could give Shelly editor access to my brain, and we can start collaborating. And back in my local brain, when I click on a history for a thought, for example, open a thought and look at the thought history, I'll see who modified the thought and when. So each thought has accountability. I can see what thoughts Shelly's working on. She can see what thoughts I'm working on, and we can actually assign each other thoughts within the brain as well. So that's another benefit. But finally, coming back to the question that Shelly mentioned of someone losing access to their laptop, maybe their hard drive fried, whatever the case may be, you get to a new machine, you install the brain and log in, and here are all of my brains. Now notice I've got this little sync icon, these little radio buttons. That's telling me I've got a local version and it's synced to the cloud. Here's a brain, I have a little picture of a desktop. That means this brain is local only. But if I scroll down through the list, I may have a brain that's cloud only. And hopefully the user that wrote in has this type of thing. Here's a brain called books, only available on the cloud. All I have to do is click. It's going to ask me if I want to download that brain. Click on download, and that books brain is now being downloaded, so I'll have local access. Now, the download isn't going to complete until my eSolutions brain. You can see it's been a long time since I've synced this brain, so it's still at 16%. As soon as this is complete, then it's going to come back and download this books brain, so I've got local access to the books brain. So by syncing, we've got not only that secure cloud backup, access online, access to other machines as well. So I can log in from my desktop at home or from my traveling laptop and download any brains that I've synced to the cloud. So many, many different benefits to syncing and having that online access, in addition to, like I said, having the roaming access from your iPhone, iPad, or even Android device. We've got an Android app available as well. And I think that there was quite a few questions that led through there, Shelley. Did I answer them all?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, there's just
the import.
That's very
import
clear. But and yeah, part of that actually, and Dimitri's also asking that he's got a longer question that we will get to, Dimitri. Yeah, a lot of people want to do importing, creating the mega brain. So, and somebody earlier wanted to do just, first of all, how do I just import my brain 8 into brain 9? And then Dimitri and a few other people had questions on, can I create that mega brain as well? Just importing brains in general. So
if you recall, when I was importing earlier, I'll click on File, Import. We've got these 2 radio buttons at the top. So you can always create a new brain with one of the different data sources. The first one being a .brain file. That's the version 8 format of a brain. So I can simply leave this radio button for create a new brain and select my existing brain. Maybe I create a version 8 brain called Matt. And I navigate out to the mat.brain file and select it. Actually, if I go into my brains on my C drive, all of my old version 8 brains are right here. So I had a lot of version 8 brains too. So I can select any one of these brains. I'll import the My Brain, say open, and it's going to read through that data. Again, I selected, a very large brain, but eventually, there it is. I can import this brain into a new brain or into the existing brain that I have open in the background. And that's how you create a mega brain, is to let's say if I've created 5 or 10 different smaller topic-specific brains, and finally I decide, you know what, this is the only way I want to access my data, but I want to be able to do one search and find all of that information in all of my 7 or 8 different brains. It's time to merge them together into the mega brain. So what I would do if those were all in version 9 is I'd go through each individual brain and archive it. And you can create a local archive. That's your entire brain backed up into a single file. I click on File and create or backup to Brain Archive, and I back it up into a BRZ. So version 8 backed up to a BrainZip. Version 9 backs up to a BRZ. That's a Brain Archive. So I create Brain Archives for my 8 different brains, and then I can select which brain I want to start from or create a new brain, and simply click on File and Import and select a BRZ file and import one by one all these different BRZs into the current open brain. I've now taken 8 brains, merged them all into one. So a little bit more of an advanced feature of merging multiple brains into one, but it could certainly be done. You can also take a master brain you've created and break it up into topic-specific segments by copying groups of thoughts. Copy those onto your clipboard and pasting those into a new brain as well. Let's go ahead and do that, because the question, Shelley, came up of how do I copy thoughts from one brain to another?
Yes, and real quickly, and I think this, just staying on this topic, Gail had a question, if you have duplicate thoughts, will it combine or duplicate? That was for import, but I suppose that could also be relevant for copy. So if you have a thought with the same name, does it copy? Which thought prevails, I guess?
There's actually a couple of different scenarios there, because each individual thought by itself has its own GUID, a global unique ID. So if I copy a group of 5 or 10 different thoughts from one brain to another, and I've already done that in the past, I'll show you what I mean here in a second. It's going to say, wait a minute, this brain already, or this thought already exists. What do you want me to do with it? And I can create right there on the spot. I can say, create a duplicate, overwrite the old one, or just skip it and move on to the next. So the brain is smart about copying thoughts from one brain to another, and it'll notice if there's a duplicate. Now, just because 2 thoughts are named the same name doesn't mean it's the same content. So if you're copying thoughts from brain A into brain Z and thoughts from brain B into brain Z, and you've got some similar names, if they don't have the same GUID, the same global unique ID, then the brain will think these are 2 separate thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and create a new copy. But you can always run a report for duplicate thought names. Again, a more advanced feature, I can open up my reports and say, show me all thoughts by thought type, tags, etc., or go into a specialized, show me all thoughts with duplicate names. And I even have some here in my testing brain. Notice I've got 2 thoughts called big stock photo, brand building, 3 thoughts called clients, or 4 now. So duplicate thoughts do happen from time to time, but the brain gives you a nice little report to help you do a little bit of gardening and clean those up. So let's copy thoughts from one brain to another. If you're just copying or you just want to link to an existing thought from another brain, I can right click and I can select copy the local thought URL. I can jump into another brain and quickly have a link to this particular, just right to this thought, without copying all the data, the notes and file attachments into the other brain. So this is like a shortcut to an existing thought in an existing brain. We can also copy the web thought URL. So from another brain, I want to find this brain online, I can copy the web thought URL. I'm going to copy the actual thoughts into a new brain. Let's say we have a whole new marketing team. So I'm going to control click on marketing. A Mac user would command click on a thought to add it into the selection box. I control click on individual thoughts, as many as I'd like, or I can even control click on a gate, and I can hold down the control key, just press control and drag a frame around a grouping of thoughts. So many different ways to populate the selected thought list. Additionally, from the current active thought marketing, let's say I want 2 generations down. That's a lot to navigate around and control click on. So I can go up to the thought tab and, or options tab rather, and select to start wandering around and adding additional content. And maybe it's under edit, sorry about that. So if I click on edit, select related thoughts. This is a more advanced feature, so I'm going through this very quickly, but child word, I'm gonna select 2 generations away and say, okay. Now you can see I've got 26 thoughts that I've just added into my selection box. Let's go ahead and copy those. That's enough. I'll copy those to my clipboard, and now I'm going to create a new brain. So I'll create my new marketing research, sort of subset brain. And once I've created my new brain, I'm going to simply right-click on the background. I have those other thoughts on the background, but notice this is not the same brain. This is not my eSolutions brain. This is my marketing research brain. I right-click and I select to paste those 26 thoughts. Now it's going to take just a moment. My brain is already working on a syncing. There, it didn't take too long. 26 thoughts, all their data, all their notes, all the file attachments, all the thought types and tags, etc. There's Word documents, there's Excel spreadsheets, PDFs. Anything associated with the thought from the other brain has been copied onto the clipboard and now pasted here into my smaller marketing brain. You can see this brain only has 27 thoughts. Now I can take this brain, sync it to the cloud, and share it with a group of people that I wanted to share my marketing information with, but I didn't want to share my entire eSolutions brain because there's information on clients and customers and operations and things outside of marketing that I did not intend on sharing. So more advanced feature to share with you there, but certainly capable of syncing brains together, or grouping brains together, I should say, merging them or segmenting them out. The choice is yours.
Absolutely. And then I guess onto More complex questions. I have, there's a couple long questions that I'll break them down for you as well, but I want to read from Dimitri. We have obviously a lot of users on the call today that are setting up brains for groups of people and want to do some customization. So let me read this. He says, our tool is very interesting. He mastered TheBrain 8 and he wants to tailor his brain to his project team. And now he's wondering for TheBrain 9, it's very important for him to develop sort of standard patterns of the work. In addition to basic thoughts and connections, the importance of typical nodes. Is it possible to carry out several projects in version 9? Answer, yes. To unite these brains in a mega brain in 2018? Answer, yes. We just showed you how, and whether it's possible to scale the size of thoughts and the links depending on parameters. For example, a contour of a thought without attached documents to show a dashed line. The size of a thought that was addressed for a project can be brighter than more boring thoughts, and then making that a template. So yes, what you're talking about, Dimitri, just to, because I've read this question a few times, is link types and link customization of link thickness. So Matt, we will show you how to do that. And then just a follow up to this, which is secondary, but I'll also, since it's also Dimitri's question, he's interested in using our tool for researching properties of cells and genes in oncology. We have a number of medical researchers, heart surgeons, pharmaceuticals using it, so that's a great thing. So it's important to get fast visual information. So Matt, I thought maybe you want to show if you have your pharmaceutical brain with the different link types and how you created those link types. You may not, I don't know if you have that in Brain 9. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. That might be a good one to show Dimitri. And then also talking about making themes and templates. So his team doesn't spend a lot of time customizing. So if we open the pharmaceutical brain, I'm thinking we can show all of this. We can show all the beauty of link types and how much more we can do in version 9, how you created your amazing wallpaper that'll inspire, and how he can then share that with his team. And I'm sorry for the 10 questions all at once, but that's sort of, they're all connected.
I think I've got them all.
Here we are.
You mentioned, yeah, you mentioned like raising the importance level of a thought or thoughts that aren't as important. That can also be done with tags as well. So we'll add tags into the mix. But first off, you notice in this grouping underneath marketing, archived presentations kind of stands out a little bit. It looks different. It has a darker background. It's in the yellow text. I can alt-click on any thought in the brain or click on the active thought to open up its thought properties display. So that allows me to tailor the look of a thought. If you really just want a thought to stand out, you know, maybe I want to select this text and say, and make it really bright purple on a light gray background or even a white background. Whatever the case may be, whatever you think is going to make that thought stand out. Maybe it's not as important. You want it to sort of disappear a little bit. Let's make it a real light gray text and keep it on the white background. So sort of lessens the view of that thought. That's one option that you have. You can modify the look and feel of any individual thought and any individual link. You want to bring importance to a particular link. The main thing that we're looking at in marketing right now is the marketing budget. That is our focus. We need to make sure we've got the budget moving forward in 2018. Rather than clicking on the thought itself, I'm going to double click on the link and bring up the link properties display. And you can see I already labeled that as needs review. I can label this as important. I'm going to give this sort of a blue and even change the thickness and give it some direction as well. So many different, actually, let me create a new, I hit escape, sorry about that, a new project. And this is the one where I'll click and important. And I can come back and modify that at any time. So, whoops, double click. And I wanted that to be in blue. I wanted the thickness to be a little bit larger. I want to give it direction. The reason why we give thoughts direction is because we can say, you know, person A reports to person B, or person A is responsible for project A. So So you can actually modify some arrows, and that's simply clicking on the thought and selecting this little arrow. Do you want it to go left, right, or be stagnant? No direction. And then we get into one-way. One-way links are a little more, that's just sort of another step beyond. The links are only visible coming in from one direction. We won't cover that today, but we'll just give this another direction just so you can see the nice graphics, and that really stands out when I hover over that thought. The next idea that I had is labeling things with some thought tags. Let's say you've got level 1 projects, level 2, level 3, etc. Whatever your naming convention is. My past projects, those are level 3. So I'm going to click to open up the thought properties and assign a tag. I'll call this level 3. So that's a new tag that I'm assigning. I can actually activate this tag, but let's first find something else that's level 3. My 2020 projections, those are level 3 tags as well. So I simply apply these tags to the thought. The tag appears when I mouse over, so I've got that additional context. This is particularly important since you mentioned you're working with a team. Shelley and I and others at TheBrain, when we're collaborating, we'll have a tag for each individual person. So if I want to bring something to Shelley's attention, I can also tag this as Attention Shelley. So that's a new tag as well. So when Shelley logs into this brain, she can actually go to the tags and say, all right, what's waiting for me? Oh, there's just one thought. It's the 2020 projections, but that's level 3. She can move on and work on level 1 category items. If you want to see all the level 3 category items, just click on that tag and there they are. So past projects and 2020 presentations are both tagged as level 3. So you can have this additional context and apply it to groups of thoughts without having to draw or add more links. It's just another way of classifying thoughts within a brain that you're creating. And then finally, the last component, before I jump into my other brain, just to show you some more of these link types in use, is, as Shelley mentioned, modifying the theme of a brain. I've got topic-specific brains. You may have noticed earlier when I had my personal brain open. Here's my personal brain. I've got sort of a wood grain, sort of 70s decor going on, but just visually, I know when I look at this brain, I know which brain I happen to be in. eSolution has the little bubbles in the background. You can see other brains have other random categories. Scout Laboratories, no different. I've got a unique wallpaper for this brain. And you can click on, let's go back to my sample brain. You can click on the background and go into brain theme, where you can modify all your defaults for the brain. The colors of the links, I don't want them yellow. I want them to be a really light green. So we just make that modification, whatever the case is, blue, whatever the case may be. Or, oops, let me go ahead and close that. And we can also select from a theme or even create our own theme once we add a background. And Shelley, maybe you've got a couple of different themes. If I can pass you presenter, we can.
Just practicing some folder imports here. And let's go back to my writer's brain, for instance, where you can actually go ahead and create different styles as well. And I have lots of different styles of brains that you can have the background color-coded and so forth. And actually, if I want to go back to my projects brain here, I have a nice background also here. And in themes, if I go up to options and go ahead and let me see, where is the, oh yeah, here we are, brain theme. I can actually go ahead and select some themes, and we actually do have the 20th anniversary wallpapers included in this build, where we can actually go ahead and select them. And those are also published on the blog. But for now, I can actually just go ahead, and I might want to change this to Into the Sun. And if I want to go ahead and do that, you can see that this theme has actually changed. And I have a very nice background and color as well. And then, of course, I can go ahead and create my own theme as well. So let me go back to the These are all the 20th anniversary themes here. That was a special build we created for our anniversary. That was a couple weeks ago. And so if I want to look at get the 20 years wallpaper, I can get this, and you can actually see this is 20 in the back, or we've got brain animals as well. We'll just show you that. Brain waves, the designers of this actually base this on brain waves also, and there's a bunch of variations on brainwave. We've got brainwaves 2, which is a little bit brighter, and brainwave. So these are all things that you can do. This is a nice lighter theme, and then I can just go ahead. If I actually want to go ahead and create this and a few other things as a theme, I can go ahead and adjust, and even rename and create a new theme. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and close this. And now you can see what a nice color that I'm working in. And actually, so that's kind of how you can customize. And as far as my pharmaceuticals brain, I think I only have that in the Brain 8. So I have to launch my Brain 8 real quick.
I have that, so
I'll go, but
take presenter back if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And one other thing I did want to show you guys real quick, while I have presenter here, and let me just go back to my writing projects area. Since we're talking about file management, the built-in file viewer for the Brain 9 is really fantastic. So once you get your files in the Brain, as you'll notice I've got here on my thoughts, you can actually easily, if you're on a Mac, by the way, you get the automatic, I purposely have a Brain 8 that I'm not upgrading so I can work with other projects as well as Brain 9, but let's just get that Brain out of the way here. And what I want to show you, Brain 9, is the content preview. So here, I have a PDF attached to this particular thought, and it automatically previews in the content preview below. So this is a very nice new feature with files and PDFs and web pages that is specific to the Brain 9. So for instance, if I click on social media, we've got that built-in web browser that Matt's showing you. And again, I apologize, my internet connection's a little slow, but you can see this page is loading. This is a live web page, so I can go ahead and actually navigate in this piece of content in my Brain, and I can do the same thing. Let me go to gladwell.com. I'm now in marketing resources. So you can see here I actually have a very unique guide to my content, but I can easily, when I click on that thought, get the content as well in my Brain. And somebody had a question about actually just tons of links and tabs in Firefox. So what you can do is create these internet guides. So you can see here I have this link of all my web pages. This one's on the Norman Group site on usability, the human mind and usability, but that's also linked under usability trends. So I can actually contextualize this web page that I'm looking at under 2 different topics here, usability trends, and that takes me all the way up to future trends, where I have all kinds of things all the way to, quantum mechanics and just Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. But what you can see here, and the reason I'm kind of navigating around, is I want to show you how nice this is to have this wonderful content preview right here to my right as I'm looking at stuff in my Brain to my left. And this can be further customized. So if I want to just go ahead and click on these little arrows here, this is the classic way, actually the Brain 8 works on the old web Brain where the content is below. I sometimes like that. And you know what? You can have it different for different brains. So I'm just going to give you show you here. We're talking a little bit about customization. I'm going to open this tab right here. For instance, my mid-century restoration brain. I'll open that. And that one I decided to do to the side. And I've got my nice wallpaper. Again, that's customized with all my research appearing as well. And of course, zoomable icons. So you can really get a sense of how each brain, as opposed to me putting a bunch of these documents in a folder. Think of how inspiring this is now with a beautiful wallpaper here of my dream mid-century house and all the articles that I'm sharing with the architects and so forth. I got them all right here, and it's just such a more civilized way, for lack of a better way, to look at this information. It's going to inspire me to do more. And of course, taking this to the next level with stuff like research, drug development. We have customers that have done that. So I guess that'll be a good segue back to you, Matt. I'll pass the ball back to you.
So this is TheBrain that Shelley had mentioned, and we use this from time to time, specifically when talking about link types. But link types is closely related to what we're talking about today, just giving your data further information. And you can see I'm on a thought right now. Let me just take you on a brief tour of this brain. You can see I've got, and this brain was created with a company that created a brain very similar to this, but I've changed around all the data and the names and product names to protect their identity. But we built this brain together, and you can see I'm keeping track of certain medical conditions that are of importance to us in this pharmaceutical company, medications that are developing. And let me go ahead and just click on one condition. I've selected atrial fibrillation.
Yeah, we'll do this real quick, and because we're actually we're 35 minutes over the hour, but there's so many great questions.
So really quickly, you can see that I've got two different medications, Liforex 2.0 and Diloxin. They're both just simply labeled as medication, but you can see when I mouse over, one is FDA approved, one is non-FDA approved. So the link label actually provides further information about the connection. If the person that I'm speaking with is a distributor from the US, I can only go in one direction, and that's down to Diloxin, FDA approved. ACE, as you can see when I mouse over, is a competitor medication. I'm not going to talk to them about ACE, or maybe on the ACE thought, I've got some information about why this distributor does not want to purchase ACE. They want to purchase Diloxin. I cannot share with them Liforex 2.0. Whereas a distributor from another location that is not restricted by the FDA, I can share that type of information. And the link.
So this is getting back to link type.
Down the path. Yes.
So so there's a couple things, Dimitri. You can use link types for visual valiance to set colors. These could be fat, thin, different colors, just to visually show things. And then adding to that, you can have a label, a note to convey a more specific type of relationship in that connection. I know we're kind of going beyond the scope of file management here, but it's just, it's so powerful, and you're doing oncology research that we are compelled to show you a few things.
Great.
Okay, and then we can't end the call without answering Donna's question, because we flaunted all these wonderful wallpapers, but on a real basic level, and we know we've got newbies on the call, and hopefully we're not scaring you, because we have a 101 class tomorrow where we go through this much slower and more methodically. Matt's hosting, so do join in for that. But how do you put your own picture selection for wallpaper? Great basic question we have not covered, so I think we'll definitely cover that before we close the session today.
There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. If you have it copied onto your clipboard, you can simply right-click on the background, and you'll have an option that says Paste Wallpaper. I've got some of my own wallpapers in a directory right on my C drive. So if I right-click on the background, I'll go into the Brain theme, and on the Options tab is where I can set up the Plex wallpaper. So
and Matt, you may not want to mess up this brain. Are you sure you want to mess up your art? Maybe you want to go to a different.
So.
Okay, all right, good. I'm saying, as I love this brain, don't mess it up for us.
Into wallpaper, and let's say I just want sort of an interesting wood background. I'll go ahead and select that. Say Open, and there I've really quickly changed this. This is sort of a dark and mysterious wallpaper now. So I've saved that other one as a theme. At any time, I can go back, go into my Brain themes, and I think that's called Cells. So I'll reload.
But what if you don't want a theme? You just want to add wallpaper to your Brain. How do you get to wallpaper? Somebody was also saying they couldn't find the wallpaper.
Sure, it's in the Brain theme, and then click on the Options tab. So Brain theme allows you to either change all your colors or go into Options. And that's where you can click the wallpaper and set up your note style, or even customize your own note style. You may have noticed in one of my other brains, I've got my own custom sort of 70s high fidelity fonts that you would see on sort of a 70s interface of something digital. So custom themes for custom notes over on the right can easily be done as well.
All right, great. And I think with that, like I said, we've covered a lot of ground. For those of you that do want to join us tomorrow for the Brain 101, we can get much more into customization and building that category structure from ground up. So if there's anything we've missed today, join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time to cover, and that's the Brain 101. And then in a couple weeks, we also have visual storytelling, where we're going to talk about the writer's brain and how to create a brain for storytelling and writing. And I think with that, the session will be recorded. You will all be emailed a link to that. We are going to close today's session. Matt, any final words of wisdom or anything else you saw perhaps in the Q&A or that you didn't get to or wanted to talk about before we end our mega webinar session today? That's well over the hour. Well over.
So I want to thank everyone for coming as well. And if we did not get to your question today, please feel free to write into support@thebrain.com. We're always happy to hear from you and answer any additional questions you may have from there.
Yes, that's right. We have complimentary support. You can chat through us through our website from 8 a.m. Pacific to 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can email us 24 hours a day, and you can also call in. And for those of you that are beyond the Brain 101 and these webinars, we can set up one-on-one. If you have a specific application like Dimitri's, where you're setting up a brain for project management or medical research, we can do a web meeting with you, you know, a little bit of to help optimize your application. So that's something that you can also request as well once you've sort of gone through the basics of our classes. So feel free to do that. And we look forward to seeing you on future Brain Technologies web events. And with that, I'll hopefully everyone will be closing their folders and opening their minds and making connections and creating a visual file management with their brain. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.